Yeah, just to get on Reddit, just to get on Discord.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Ethical Non-Monogamy. And this is our panel for the 3 o'clock hour. We're going to be joined with Hardison Parker, Paul Garland, and Alex Lee. Crush wants to thank Evie Dawn and Cassia White for sponsoring today's panel. And welcome, guys.
Hey,
How
how's it
are
going?
you? It's amazing. Guys, I want to jump into it because I've read some of your work and I I'm just baffled by this because I've never written non-monogamy erotica. I have personally, but I want to know your take on it.
Sure.
Let me start with you, Paul.
Mhm.
What drew you to writing ethical non-monogamy erotica specifically?
It's something I've actually got a little bit of experience with. So,
Yeah.
I lived a little bit in the lifestyle. We're not crazy, we're not swingers, but mainly actually I was drawn towards it because it allows me. I write in several different genres. I've actually had some books traditionally published in the um thriller and horror world and still do. Um, but this, you're right. E&M is a big umbrella term. We'll come to that later. It covers lots of different genres, but the genre I mainly write in is hot wife and cuckold. But it actually covers a whole load um, of genres, including harem and harem, however you want to pronounce it, and things like that. But yeah, no, it allowed me to sort of explore the emotional depth and the complexity of human relationships in a way that feels intimate and exploratory and transgressive. And there's something incredibly compelling about how trust, vulnerability, and desire can all and jealousy can all coexist
Mhm.
in a single story in these dynamics. So yeah, I loved how it challenges traditional narratives about love and fidelity. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to explore. There's a lot of real estate where you can take your stories within it, and for me that makes for really rich storytelling. And that's what I wanted to do. I don't just want to write templated, you know, save the cat type stories. I want to write something different and explore a totally different genre. And there's the market there for it. So it's
Okay.
a little bit of everything really.
It's a lot
And
more
obviously
dynamic than a P&D story. So,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's so much you can explore. And there's so it's a big umbrella term, E&M. So, but my sort of specialities are in the hot wife and the cuckold inside of it.
yeah. How about you, Hardison? What do you think?
Well, I got started because I was in the swinger uh, world
Mhm.
before I started writing, and I started writing what I knew about. So, I, and Medium really let me do a whole bunch of different things and try things out. And then a couple authors who are already doing Hot Wife books said, "Hey, write Hot Wife because it sells." And
Mhm.
so I started writing that. But most of my stories before that even had swinging elements, uh, like cuckold elements, but always with consent. And that's a hard distinction to do in the cuckold world
Mhm.
because the whole point of cuckold is that the husband uh, isn't really fully consenting. But I don't like the non-consent. I like consent. So I just started writing what I knew because my whole marriage was an open marriage. We went to swing clubs, we went to um, parties at people's houses, and we had a great time. And I wanted to share that, and then it just became what I wrote. So that's most of what I write now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Alex?
And honestly, I started writing because I couldn't find the story I was looking for. To be quite honest, it was back then. I didn't use Kindle, and I didn't um, um, go into Amazon, or I wasn't. I hadn't discovered the hot wife or cuckold as a genre. I was just browsing through Literotica,
Mhm.
and then kind of I got drawn into some of the stories there, but it wasn't quite there. And I thought, why shouldn't I think about writing something myself? And it was like a fun experiment. I put
Mhm.
it there, and I was surprised by um, the feedback. Of course, there was some comments that were quite, especially the anonymous ones, quite harsh. But there were so many that was saying, "Oh, it's a great story." looking back, probably it was an awful story, but it was my first story, especially in Erotica. But looking at the feedback, I thought, that's interesting. And I still wasn't gonna move into writing until my wife, I shared with her some of the comments. She didn't read the story. Actually, she's read only one of my stories so far, which she liked. But then she suggested, well, if you're writing this stuff, why don't you publish on Amazon? And that's how I started. And it's relatively new. I started back in 2019. I think 2022 was my first story on Amazon, and ever since then, I've written about 21 stories. And yeah, it started as a personal curiosity. It turned into a passion of writing. I would say emotionally rich stories, something around the build-up about. I like the slow burning story, and probably that's why I wasn't finding the things that I was looking at Literotica. So I think in a way it was fortunate that I was looking at in the wrong place, so to speak. So that's how I started writing in the genre. That's how I started writing in the first place.
Yeah. So you were talking about some bad comments. Let me ask you this: what was the most challenging aspect of writing in this niche? Did that kind of fall in line with that? Or were there people that were just pissed off about it, or was it just the writing, or what was the?
I think to be fair, for that what I found on Literotica is that people, it's interesting how that some of the comments they started being judgmental about what I wrote there. What I wrote there. It wasn't about my writing skills, although they were poor back then, especially not English, not my first language. But it was mainly that they were judgmental about the wife and the husband, the usual stuff in the hot wife called the erotica. So I think one of the main challenges is probably that is finding the right audience, because the question I was thinking, well, you read the story, right? You could have stopped, and it was clearly in the subtitle. It was hot wife story. So some of the comments were a bit unfair. That instead of stopping, it seems that people were drawn into it if they bothered to read the whole story. Yet they were coming back almost I wouldn't say criticizing, but being judgmental or even mocking some of the things there. So yeah, that actually is one of the challenges. Fortunately, I think this is something that I think it's fair to say when you go and publish work, paid work, usually people that buy this work, they know what they're buying, and of course then the criticism is much fairer. For example, if someone said, "Oh, you've got stilted dialogue," which actually they did say, which affected me quite a lot. I started paying much more attention to this. It's a fair comment because it's about your writing, not about what you write. So yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges: finding the right platform and the right audience, and making sure that the people that are gonna get your book, it's clear what they're getting, so that you set the expectations up front.
Yeah, I've noticed that personally when I look at different styles of erotica, that almost like hot wife is in the title. I mean, is that something you kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Hardison? What's the most challenging aspect for you?
Standing out in a field that has a lot of people writing the same general topic. Because technically a hot wife story is basically just someone going out and having sex. Now, there's a lot of nuances to it, so that's oversimplifying, but it's a genre that covers basically anything. But you have to make yourself stand out to get your sales. So the marketing standing out phase is really difficult, and it's really competitive. And I'm glad that there's been so many other writers who are doing it different ways to give ideas. One person helped me get started, and now I've gone to other people to get different ideas to improve. But it's been a challenge, and that's also juggling work and writing, because writing is not my full-time job as much as I would like it to be.
I think everybody could say that.
Yeah.
What about you, Paul? What's the most challenging aspect you have in writing this,
Uh,
John?
I think being an author in general is challenging, especially when you are established. And I mean, I've got over 70 books, and I think I'm on book number 73 now.
Oh,
And
wow.
constantly, that's just, the hot wife and cockle stuff, and finding new ideas to explore, trying, like, a little bit like Hardison says, it's a niche that a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon. I think Hardison said, it sells, hot wife sells, and that got out on the various author forums. It's a gold mine. This is what you want to be writing in, and a lot of people have jumped in. So making yourself stand out in that crowd is very difficult. Constantly finding new ideas, because ultimately, all your stories are going to be about, um, a wife exploring outside of the marriage. Um, so finding those new ideas, I've actually sort of leaned into hot past, which is another subgenre, if you like. And then I've also taken it to a few new places. I've recently wrote a science fiction um, trilogy, so I've actually set it in the future and explored future technologies um, in a hot wife way. But for me, those are some of the challenges. But for me, the biggest challenge personally is just balancing realism with fantasy. Balancing realism with eroticism. Um, you want to keep the story hot and emotionally gripping, but you also want to keep it sort of grounded, and keep the dynamics and everything realistic, so it's not too eye rolly or too cliche. Um, that's quite difficult. That's something that if you look at my earlier books, I struggled with a little bit. You could tell it was a little bit over the top. And
Mhm.
now I've slowed my stories right down. I write really long stories. So in this genre, you tend to find there are two distinct levels. There are the short stories, which are like the 10,000 to 15,000 word stories. And
Mhm.
then there are the much longer fiction stories, like mine and Kirsten McCurran's and Max Sebastian's and Kenny Wright's. We write much longer, 30, 40, 50,000 word stories. So
Mhm.
I've leaned more into that. And it's balancing all the emotions in the story to be successful. There's so many emotions in this. Jealousy. You've got to explore the communication between the man and the wife. That's really important. And you're exploring things like trust, insecurity, the growth of the relationship, and then also, um, I'd agree with Alex in that. But I think we might come to this question a little bit later. But just overcoming the um, negativity that sometimes surrounds it, because ultimately you are talking about, it's not cheating, because it's, as Hardison said, it's consensual
Yeah,
exploration.
let
But
me jump on that question
a
right
lot of
quick, and
people,
then you'll continue on that one, because
yeah, a lot
that's
of
a
people
good one.
don't understand it.
Yeah. So the biggest misconception about ethical non-monogamy is, what you were just talking about there with the judgmental, crass comments, or just
Yeah, people think it's just sleeping around. It's just about
yeah.
sleeping around, or they think it's a free for all with no rules or consequences. But
Mhm.
ethical non-monogamy, it's built on the same foundation of honesty, consent, and
Mhm.
mutual respect. It's not about the absence of boundaries. It's
Mhm.
about redefining those boundaries. It's about the conscious design of those boundaries.
Mhm.
Um, and ironically, it often requires more communication and emotional maturity and understanding than traditional monogamy. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, I think, Paul's hit it on the head, but I think also a lot of people misconceive the notion that it means your marriage isn't working,
Mhm.
that people are being a hot wife or cuckolding their husband because the marriage is breaking down. And that's not the case. All the books I write, my couples are totally happy with each other, and they only do this because it turns the other one on.
That's it. It's a kink. It's a kink, just like
Yeah.
BDSM, just like voyeurism, exhibitionism. It's a kink, and yet for some reason it's perceived that the husband's a wimp or that the marriage is in trouble, so they've got to go outside the marriage to fill in a void or something like that. I mean, maybe for some people it is, but in my experience, it's not that. It's simply a kink, like any other kink.
Yeah.
But there is
If I may chime in, I fully agree with both of you actually on this one. Same with my books. I don't look at hot wifing or the lifestyle as way to fix a marriage. To me, the marriage should be in a much more stable state to go into this journey, and it's a journey for the couple where at the end they become even more connected. So I've had some feedback from some readers, even fans, saying, "Oh, is it realistic? Why all your stories are so happy ending?" type of thing. But first of all, that's the way I believe it should be, and second, I think. I know in some cases, swinging and all those people start in order to fix a breaking relationship or something like this. I think to my experience, from what I know or what I've read, probably you have to be in the safe zone to make that step. It's the risk is too high to go when you have trouble in relationship into that space. So sorry to interrupt if I jumped ahead, but I just wanted to. It's so much resonating what both of you said, so I wanted to jump in.
Yeah,
And
I
say,
mean,
yeah.
in my experience, I know a lot of swinger couples, a lot of people are in the hot wife lifestyle, cuckold lifestyle, the kink lifestyle, fetish lifestyle, and I can truly say to you that most of the couples that I know, most of the people I know, my friends that are in that world, in that lifestyle, actually have stronger, more defined, happier marriages than a lot of monogamous couples I know. And people talk about they're going, you're doing these, exploring these kinks, you're going down these new avenues to try and save your marriage. A lot of people whose marriages are in trouble do awful things. They might have a baby just to try and fix their marriage. Move house or go to all kinds of um, crazy lengths and extremes to try and save the marriage. But let me tell you now, in my experience, very, very few people would dip their toe into the lifestyle to try and fix their marriage. It's a misconception for sure.
Yeah. I think it's the same concept as if you raise a kid and you don't lock your liquor cabinet and you tell them, oh yeah, if you want to sip during dinner of my wine, you can have a sip. They don't crave to go and do that behind your back. They're not going to sneak the bottles out of the liquor cabinet and fill them with water later. But with the hot wife or the swingers, you're giving the people who want either a bisexual relationship or they want to watch or they just want to have a different experience, you're giving them permission to do it to enhance the marriage. And then they don't feel the need to go do it without you or without your consent. And I think that's a real important thing if you're writing ethical non-monogamy is that, these are people who have desires just like anyone. And by letting them have access to these desires, you're making them not want to look for something elsewhere. They're not going to go and say, "Oh, I'm going out with the girls tonight," and then end up, hooking up with someone.
Absolutely, yeah. A way I often describe it as well is it's for me it's like watching porn. Only the actress in the porn movie is the most beautiful woman in the world. It's your wife. Um, And I know that's what it is for a lot of fellas that are into the wife sharing, wife watching thing. Just like watching porn, but instead of watching two random people, you're actually watching your wife and somebody else. And who's is more beautiful and more desirable in the world than your wife. No, so that's kind of a way I look at it. Yeah, but that's the real life side of it. There are misconceptions about us as well that write it in that we must all be those of us that are writing hot wife and cuckold stuff. We must all be crazy swingers that are sharing our wives, and I would say the majority of authors in our niche, in the hot wife niche, actually don't participate in it at all at home. It's a fantasy for them, and they often started off writing it to explore that fantasy, without actually doing it. It's almost cathartic for them. They're exploring it through their writing rather than doing it in real life. So the misconception that all of us are, crazy swingers in the lifestyle, again, that is wrong. Some of us are, some of us aren't, but we shouldn't all be tarred with the same brush.
I think that's a good point to the next question. Have you ever personally faced any challenges or stigmas because of writing in this genre? Have you been personally attacked or judged or, you know?
I haven't anyway. Um, I don't go to a lot of the places where people comment, but on Medium, I haven't had any negativity, other than an occasional comment from someone who wants to see the guy get something.
Mhm.
Because most of my stories are the woman being a hot wife, so the guy is just hearing about it later. But I always try to incorporate some kind of reward for him, for letting the hot wife go out and do things. But other than a couple minor comments, and they still read the stories, they still come back regularly. I haven't really had any problems like what Alex mentioned earlier.
It's probably as I said, it was when you publish on sites like Literotica, because I would say probably the category, usually I think it's loving wives or something. It's not clear. I've never had this on Amazon, for example, someone commenting. The comments there would be more around as to how the story finishes, or why did the husband reconcile with the wife, or something like this, which is a fair point, but you can't satisfy all the readers, unfortunately. So yeah, um, I think to me the other challenge probably is, I wouldn't say it's a stigma, but probably it comes from the stigma, is you can't really advertise erotica, and that to me, at least for me, it never worked, and that's why I think, how do you promote your book unless you already have an established readership? Um, so that's where I think the stigma around erotica that exists there leads to this challenge, because most of the platforms, they do not allow advertising the way for any other genre. So that's, to me, is one of the biggest challenges, more in practical terms. So
Yeah, and
and
that's
to this,
a
they
huge
haven't
challenge.
found a way around it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that is a huge challenge, not being able to advertise on Amazon or Facebook if it's erotica. And it
Yeah,
could end up getting
that's an
used
erotica issue.
completely bad.
Yeah, it's not an erotica issue for the entire genre, isn't it? And there is certainly a stigma around being an erotica author. I mean, from my uh, personal experience, as I mentioned, I'm also a traditionally published author, and a screenwriter as well. I've wrote some TV shows and things like that, some success with that in the past. And I have to deliberately keep those pen names and my Paul Garland pen names completely separate, simply because any association at all um, between the two could actually damage
Yeah.
my trad published stuff. So I have to keep those personas and everything completely separate, and that's a shame. It's crazy because there are writers that write under different pen names in lots of different genres, but you throw erotica into that, and suddenly you're this awful person. Your personal lifestyle choices.
And then you become
Are
really
terrible.
famous. And then you become a really famous writer, and then you release them as writing as,
Yes,
Paul
yes,
Garland.
that's
Like Anne
right.
Rice did that with Anne Rampling, and Piers Anthony had a couple that he wrote under a different pen name that now he has his pen name on them. So
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And there definitely is a little bit of stigma thrown towards us, but we're in this world, and you can't go into erotica writing, and certainly not into some of the more edgy niche markets such as Hot Wife and Cuckold, without being prepared to face a little bit of criticism. And like Alex said, similar to Alex, I actually started exploring this genre on Literotica and some of the other free story sites, if you like. And I'm on Medium and not so much Patreon because obviously my Patreons are actually paying to follow me, so they're there for a reason. But yeah, on Medium, there are a lot of people that read these stories. Um, and I actually put it down to what I call, well, I'm sure it's not, I didn't invent this term, it's a very popular term, post-nut clarity. I think
Right.
there's an awful lot of guys that love this stuff and they read along and they get to all the juicy bits and they're jerking off like a crazy person. And then, they get to the crucial part, they shoot the load, not to put too fine a point on it. And then suddenly the guilt and the shame creeps in. We've all been there. I don't think there's a guy out there that hasn't at least one time, possibly, or maybe this is just me, but I'll put it jerked off to something we shouldn't have
Just
jerked
you.
off to, and then kind of gone, yeah,
What? Let me,
yeah, I feel bad about that now. So I think there's a lot of readers that do that. It's a secret thing for them. Perhaps they've got this kink, they can't speak to their wife about it. Um,
right.
or the friends about it. So they explore it through reading in the genre. It's a dirty secret. And then I think sometimes they take that out on us as authors by, sort of um, criticizing the book unfairly or dropping a bad review. Every single book I do, there's someone out there, maybe he's watching or she, who drops me a 1 star or 2 star review on every book. I'll have 35 stars and 25 4 stars and one 1 star review. And I'm like, that's
Right.
the same guy it's gonna be. It's gonna be.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, let me
so
pause. Let me stop you right there and say the scavenger word for this panel is road. But I got that. But yeah, keep going there, Paul. I'm sorry.
Hang on.
so no
ROD, ROAD.
so no
What's
that
that?
that yeah,
What, what was the word, Ranch? Sorry.
Road, like car
ROD,
on a road.
ROAD.
ROAD. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. But yeah, I feel you on the post nut clarity and then the 1 star reviews for sure. But
but yeah, I think that's definitely some of the reason why. Because Alex said, the people have written, they've read the story. They've gone all the
mhm,
way through. My stories are very clearly marked, even if the title's not, the title isn't explicitly obvious as to what the story might be, which a lot of mine aren't.
yeah,
Um, but I always put it's in the blurb. This is a hot wife story, contains scenes of cuckolding, ethical non-monogamy, polygamy, whatever it may be. Um,
mhm,
Everything is there in the blurb. You cannot buy one of my books and then pretend that you thought it was some sort of adventure story or something crazy. It's very plainly there, and people they'll read all the way to the end and then drop you a comment actually. Well, how did you get that far? There was a wife sharing scene in chapter 3, and you
so
managed to somehow move past that and get to the end
you're
of the book, and then you decide it's not for you. So there's
you're
definitely
telling me
that personal clarity in there.
your books aren't titled Hot Wife Takes the Church or anything like that?
No, they're a
Just
little
making
bit. Some of them are. Some of them are. Don't get me wrong. I've written stories. I caught my wife in bed with my boss. That one's pretty
right.
much does what it says
That's
on the tin,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But then I've got other stories. Like the sci-fi ones mentioned, which are just called cheat codes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Safe word, hardcore. The implications there, but it's like you say, it's not quite as
Yeah. My
obvious
Right.
as what some authors are.
my sci-fi one is called Telepornication. So
Oh, dude, yeah. I
Yeah,
heard that
nice. I
one.
like it. Yeah, I like
yeah.
it.
But it's of course dungeon, and I don't want to change the title, so
Of
I'm
course
not
it
on
is.
dungeoning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
That's
but
another challenge as well, isn't it? The old Amazon dungeon.
yeah,
We have to be very careful to keep the
I, I'm
stories
lucky. I only have
consensual.
3 books in there,
Just the
uh,
3.
out of 50. So,
That's not
you
bad, not a
know,
bad ratio. Yeah.
no.
Luckily,
And, and they're
none of
all
mine are in
they're
the
all
dungeon.
series books. They're all
Mm.
like the first book in a series. So as long as I sell the
Ouch.
second book out of the dungeon,
Mm.
so that they'll find the first book, because once they know my name and the series name, they can find the first book. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's a big challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, the erotic, the Amazon dungeon is a challenge again for all of us Amazon authors, but especially Hot Wife and Cuckold because it does have that element of wife sharing, cheating, whatever.
Except
Yeah.
I think that's the big misconception is it's not about cheating.
Exactly. It's consensual. It's
Yeah.
always consensual. But you
Well,
have to be
that
very
kind of
careful
goes.
not to toe the lines into, the what do
But
they call it?
there are cheating wife erotica.
Mm,
That's a whole different thing.
it
Cheating
is.
spouses, that's a whole different thing. You have to separate them out, right? So that
Yeah.
gets us to our next question. So what are your thoughts on the current landscape of ethical non-monogamy erotic fiction? Like how's it going for you guys?
I think it's going great. Uh,
Yeah.
it's growing for me. I don't write. Well, I do write some hot wife books that are just blatantly in the title, and that's all it's about. Most of my
Yeah.
books have some other driving force story. Like I do parodies, so I have Delight Club, which is parody of Fight Club.
Yeah.
I have Telepornication. I have a couple BDSM series going on right now. But I like to add something to the story, and then the hot wife thing is sometimes secondary to it, but it's there.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even do the hot wife. It's just either swinging couple or straight BDSM story.
Mm.
But I do have some because I didn't start writing hot wives on Amazon until I found a collab. And when you do a collaboration, you do it the way that whoever's organizing it wants. So they organize this hot wife goes to a resort. So I wrote about a hot wife going to a resort, and it was Hot Wife in Paradise or whatever. I don't know. Oh, no, Sin City Hot Wife was my first one because it was Hot Wife's on vacation.
Mm.
So and then I like the character because I fall in love with my characters a lot, and I really like Jesse. So I
Mm.
wrote 7 books about Jesse. Every collab that came up, we did another Hot Wife collab. I wrote about Jesse, and then
Right.
once the collabs stopped coming as frequently because people kind of moving away from that now. Um, I just kept Jesse going. I got to the point where Jesse got a little too repetitive because of the things she did and the way she did them. So I made her a neighbor friend that she gets into the hot wife lifestyle, and now I have Nia's hot wife adventures. And so, but they do it totally different. Like Jesse's husband will arrange everything for her. She went on a business trip to Vegas. He set up all these people to find her and do things with her. Um, Nia's husband isn't quite as dynamic about that. So and they agreed that they would use a 20-sided die to determine when she did it and what she did, and with who. So they have a list of all the acceptable people that she could be with, and they have a list of um, uh, where they can go, and they roll a 20-sided die, and that's her adventure for the week. And so I like doing that. I like adding that kind of element to it. And I think there's 2 types of hot wife stories that are both very popular. There's the ones that are just, okay, she's a hot wife, but we're not going to really get into that, and you're just going to see her go to the boss or go to uh, her husband's boss or do something dirty, and that's all the story is. And then there's the kind that Paul writes and Alex writes, and I try to write where here's a story, and we're going to get into the relationship with the husband, and we're going to get into life around them, and then there's also going to be a lot of sex. So
Alex, real quick, tell me how it's going for you, and I'll ask one more question as a real quick one. Um, how's the hot wife landscape working for you and the non-monogamy erotic fiction?
I
I
think
can't say that word. I can't say.
it's a bit complicated, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
non
yeah.
and then mo. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think actually I agree with Hardison. It's going well. Actually, I wouldn't say it's fantastic. I think it's going in a promising way. What I mean is, there's I think I might be wrong, but what I've read recently, I think there's a shift towards stories that prioritize emotional nuance, if it
Mhm.
makes sense. I mean, it's like it's more towards something that I and Paul and as Hardison mentioned, we're trying to not to write about the shock value. Of course, there is sex. There is a lot of sex, at least definitely in my stories. But it's about the connection, the realism, the emotions. And I'm not sure why that's it. One potential reason I thought about it is probably it's partially a response to the rise of the AI generated content, because this content tends to focus and favor more on the shorter plot light fiction, at least at the current stage of the AI. So the human writers, I think they're leaning into what they do best, which is the character depth, the relationship dynamic, the long-term emotional arcs. For example, the slow burn stories, which escalate obviously at one point, and then the aftermath. I think, I hope, not anytime soon, AI would be able to beat the human author of delivering the full emotional nuance of, because Hot Wife, I think Paul touched upon it. It's about realism, the balance between fiction and realism, because it has to be realistic, which means emotions, they have to be taken absolutely right. That's why I usually spend a lot of time on editing. It's not about the language that much, but checking, okay, I want this to be exciting and hot, but would the wife or the husband say this way? Would actually feel that way? So I think ultimately I look at the AI pushing us with its pressure on what was traditionally hot wife genre. I think it's evolving because we were pushed by this AI churn out of massive short, I wouldn't say low quality content, but focus on the shock value, on I think it's pushing us more into mastering our craft, into this relationship dynamic, and exploring the emotions and the depth of emotions, which is actually essentially should be what hot wife story should be about, according to me. So does it make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick, how do you market yourself in the genre? Real fast, Paul, go for it.
It's very difficult, as we've mentioned. Erotic is becoming increasingly difficult to sell.
Yeah.
Mainly, censorship around the globe. You'd think that in a world where we're trying to become more liberal and accepting of different people, trying to be more inclusive, everywhere, that it'd be getting easier, but it's not. It's getting more difficult.
Yeah.
So the answer is selectively and carefully. What I've tried to do, talking about the hot wife, the landscape very, very quickly, is I'm very passionate about this genre. Very proud to be one of the leading authors in it, and to have found success in it. So we actually set a group up. Alex and Hardison are in the group, and it's called Ache, ACHE, the authors of Cuckold and Hot Wife Erotic. You can find us on Twitter. We have our own Medium publication. And I invited, with the help of a popular reviewer in the genre called R, he helped me to assemble a group of all the best hot wife authors in the world. Skylar and Sunny are also, we're proud to have them in the group now. We have Kirsten Mucker and Max Sebastian, GK Grayson, Kenny Wright, Dolores Swallows, and it's a really tight-knit group. And we basically set that up to promote the genre. And it is an expanding and growing genre all the time. I mean, we're seeing more and more of it on TV now, with The Hunting Wives, which is a new Netflix series, The Secret Lives of Mom and Wives, if you've seen that on Hulu. There's all kinds of stuff exploring the ethical non-monogamy side of life. It's been explored more on TV. The challenge we face is that with an expanding and growing genre, you are going to get an influx of new authors all wanting a piece. So that's a little challenge there, which we've already covered. But it's definitely a growing genre. We're getting more. I mean, I'm now a full-time author, able to earn enough money to live on, which is a privilege. So it's definitely a genre which is expanding and growing. But we created Ache, so that we could all promote each other, because you simply can't advertise. Facebook, Amazon, none of the most popular social media places will let you advertise. And then you've got to have your social media presence, but you have to be very careful not to trigger getting blacklisted or what have you. But yeah, you've just got to be the best possible writer you can, and hope that your work is good enough to attract you a following. You got to have a newsletter. Medium's a great place to showcase your stories, and Patreon. But yeah, it's very difficult because you really want to get your work out there. You really want to advertise it. But
Thanks, guys.
with all the
So-
limits that are on it, it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, I hate to cut everybody off, but I mean, we've run out of time. But thanks for spending the last 40 minutes with us. Next is the Reader's Lounge, where we have author Missy Jane for an author takeover. After that, we'll have the author track panel, Pantser versus Plotter, and the reader track panel, Morally Gray main characters. Make sure you take note of the scavenger hunt word from earlier to submit it for another chance to win. Giveaways will start at 5:30 Central Time. You must be present to win. Be sure to hop back in the reading lounge to enjoy Missy. And make sure you're leaving the breakout room. You click the leave the room and not leave the meeting. Man, it's been great talking to you guys. You've opened up a whole lot of ideas for me.
Thanks, Ranch. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to take questions, but if anyone has any, please send them through the messages.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, by all
Thank you very
means.
much.
Yep, you can. It's been
Find
great
these
to be
guys
here,
on
Ranch.
social
I've
media.
enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
Good stuff.
Yeah.